subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss an upload.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeonmaster, and today I'm going to show you how to calculate damage a little faster with the help of this book. This is Tracy Hickman's XDM, the Extreme 2nd Edition. Hickman, of course, is the designer of Dragonlance and Ravenloft, so he's one of the all-time greats in the industry, and this is the latest edition of XDM, and he does something very interesting. He calculates damage with a D20. XDM uses the D20 for everything, both hitting and damage. Before we get into hacking hit points, we have to understand what they are. Mechanically, hit points are a timer. They tell you how long a character can stand on their feet before they drop. When a paladin smites or a fireball goes off, the timer goes down. When the cleric casts heal, the timer goes up, extending the length of the combat. And this is why in 5e, at high levels, the combats can get a little draggy. One of my fellow designers, I forget who, used this analogy. It feels like you've got 177 beads and you're pushing beads across the table like, oh, you were hit for 40 and then 30 and then 20, but the cleric gives you 17 beads back. That's kind of how D&D can feel. And XDM proposes a way to just cut through all that, hack it, and speed up the combat. So this is what he does. He simply rolls a d20 and interprets the result. A 2 would mean minor damage, either a hit point or nothing, and 16, 17, 18 is significant damage, and it may kill a lesser opponent. He uses 2 charts, but he stresses these are not hard and fast charts. They're abstract. Weak foes are killed on an 11 or better. Boss foes are damaged on a roll of 10, but a natural 20 means worthy of an epic telling. That means later in the combat, you might rule that the big boss dies, but early in the combat, if it's a dragon, I might say something like they suffer a debilitating injury, like you slash the dragon's throat and it can't use its breath weapon. How cool is that? Just imagine the cheers and the high fives that would go up at your table. And this eliminates all the bean counting, but keeps the flavor of the game. It's not science, it's an art, and it leaves a lot to the game master's discretion. But if you've got a couple years experience with D&D or any other game system under your belt, you get a feel for how much average damage a monster or an opponent can inflict with a single blow. And Hickman points out hit points are really an abstraction. When the players inflict the hit points, they convey that information in specific numbers. Like I scored 17 hit points of damage. But the game master then interprets that, taking those numbers and making meaning out of it. The skilled game master isn't going to say, well, the ogre still has 36 hit points. They're going to say, you hit the ogre in the side and he groans and then he lifts his club and he strikes back at you. And it's actually super easy to do in 5e because the stat blocks contain average monster damage. Let's take a look at the Catanoctrus from Cobalt Press Tome of Beast 3. Armor class 18, hit points 168, Mind Ravage for 45 hit points of psychic damage. Instead of fiddling around for 10 8-sided dice, you could just roll a 20. A 3 is a 35, 17 is 55, natural 20 it's the max, 80 hit points, and move on with the game. But what about variable weapon damage? Shouldn't a great sword or a great axe do more damage than a dagger? Absolutely, it should, and the game master can just interpret that. A roll of 16 with a great sword does more damage than a roll of 16 with a dagger. Just cut the damage in half. You do that with a fireball? Sure you can. The average fireball from a 5th level magic user does 28 hit points of damage. You could really round that up to 30 and it's saved for half damage. So a roll of 6 on that fireball would cause, say, 22 hit points of damage, and a roll of 16 might cause, I don't know, 35 or 36 hit points of damage. It's probably not going to make a major difference. And you can have your players calculate their character's average damage. Put them to work for once in a while. I mean, they're always arriving late and they never bring you beer. Or if they're too lazy, you can just check out this chart and link from Start Your Meeples. Which class scores max damage on level 1? Every character is in the 16 to 20 range. War clerics are overpowered and Sorcerer 2 has some quirky combos, but those are outliers and the subject of a different video. Divide that max damage in half to get the medium damage, and you'll see characters score between 8 and 10. This assumes you're optimizing your character in every possible way, and you use your optimal attack combo. Everyone's doing more or less the same damage, an average of 9 to 10 per round. It's one of the great ironies of 5e that it takes an hour to make up a character, and for all the customization and optimization, all 5e characters do about the same damage. So how do these charts align with actual play? Well, if you're a fan of the channel, you know I love my Moldvay BX, and if you look in the stat blocks in here, a Hobgoblin, typical first level monster, has 5 hit points, which is the median damage for a fighter character in this game. 5th edition Hobgoblins have 11 hit points, which is, again, about the median damage for an average first level character. So in both this game and 5e, if you roll just slightly higher than average, you're going to kill that Hobgoblin in one shot. Otherwise, they're going to linger for another round. And that's what Hickman's chart does. with just a lot less math. And these charts work for any character level. Everything is relative. What's a boss monster on first level, like a bugbear, becomes a weak foe for an 8th level character. And freed from the idea that every hit point must be accounted for, the GM can focus on narrating the action and making sure all the players are involved. I can already hear the objections in the comments section. There's going to be two. First, that it takes an experienced game master, and second, that it's arbitrary. You do not need a lot of experience game mastering Dungeons & Dragons to do this. Again, the average monster damage is right in the stat block. You're just varying it. And if you make a mistake, no one's really going to die, and your characters probably have healing word and healing spirit. They're going to be okay. The second objection is that it's arbitrary, and you need a lot of trust and buy-in for your players. First of all, the players don't know how you calculate damage, right? You don't have to tell them. It's all happening behind a screen. Next, the entire game is arbitrary. Why is Chainmail and a Shield armor class 16? Because Gary Gygax decided it was in 1972, and Wizards said, yeah, that sounds about right. He wasn't a medieval pikeman, he was an insurance salesman from Wisconsin. 16 works because it just feels right. It means an average orc or goblin is going to hit you 1 out of every 4 times. And who doesn't trust their game master? Wouldn't you let your game master walk your dog or watch your kid for a couple hours? Okay, maybe you wouldn't, but shouldn't you be able to trust them to make up damage for a hobgoblin or a troll that doesn't exist? Do you have a 95% casualty rate at your table that you think something might be amiss? The game isn't real, we make it up. And it's true, the rules provide a framework. That's what damage does. It's providing a range of damage that would be appropriate. You can use that average damage and look at that maximum range of the damage. Just make sure that you don't inflict more damage than that. It'll all be good. That's what I've learned from actually playing with designers, including Hickman. The version of the game that is published, that comes to you from the shelf, is not necessarily the version that they play at home. And if you want to get really radical, you can check out Easy D6 and Viking Death Squad. They have a very interesting way of calculating hit points. Both of them count strikes instead of specific granular hit points. 3 strikes and you're out, you're dead. Viking Death Squad has armor that can absorb hit points and damage. Easy D6 does an armor save system, but the concept is the same. Stop counting hit points. In a 5e game, you could just say every 10 hit points is a hit. If you like, roll a 20. Anything between 5 and 15 is a single hit. Lower than that is ineffective. 16 to 20 is 2 hits, and a natural 20 is a hit plus a debilitating injury. The point of these tips is not to rush through combat. I love combat, I love tactics, I love exciting combats on the edge of cliffs or against dragons where the characters are just one roll away from success or failure. Those are the moments that make Dungeons & Dragons really fun. So you want to cut through all the math to get to those moments. And I understand if you got a player who's like, no, I want to roll my fireball damage because it goes and you roll all the dice, and sometimes that can be fun, but for me as a player, when I'm watching that, I'm taken out of the game. It's like I'm watching my friend do math. I just want to stay in the game, I want to stay in the moment, and simpler dice mechanics help me do that. Hickman's got way more tips and hacks in this book, as well as tons of random charts and tips for making adventure design way easier. I highly recommend it. It's included in the link below. Also below you'll find links to my Reviled Society, Supercut, Patreon, Facebook, the Tome of Beasts, Easy D6, and Viking Death Squad. So don't be afraid to hack the game and try out new rules. And don't let anyone tell you it's not Dungeons & Dragons. It is Dungeons & Dragons the way you want to play it, and that's what this channel is about. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s.
Did somebody say hack?
Deathbringer, I meant hack the game.
Oh, what about players who roll the dice before the DM calls for a roll?
No.
What about players who bring over sandwiches for themselves, but not for the DM?
That's more annoying, but still.
What about players who cancel at the last second?
Alright, let her rip.
Awesome sauce! Now get my t-shirt below and watch more Dungeon Craft!